Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're looking at perfect competition. We'll look at the definition, characteristics, then we'll look at price determination under perfect competition. We're also going to look at the short run and the long run position of a firm under perfect competition, and then we'll look at the loss-making position, and finally we'll look at how you can actually minimize the losses. Perfect competition is defined as a market structure where firms have no power over the price. Now, we need to understand that under perfect competition, the prices are dictated by the market forces of supply and demand. And once these prices are dictated at the industry level, then each firm is free to sell at the particular price that has been set by the market forces of supply and demand. And that is the reason why the firms under perfect competition are referred to as price takers. Proceed. Let's look at the characteristics. There's a large number of buyers and sellers under perfect competition. So you're not just looking at a few firms in the industry, but you're looking at a number of firms in the industry. And you're looking at a number of buyers. Then there are also no barriers to entry or exit. A firm is free to enter the industry and exit or leave at any time. The products that are produced are homogeneous or identical. They are standardized products, products that have the same characteristics in terms of quality. Okay? Then the buyers in this industry have got perfect information. There's no government interference, and there's free mobility of goods and factors of production. I'm sure you can see that. There's free mobility of goods and factors of production. So those are some of the characteristics, but these are not the only ones. We are going to continue with the characteristics. No firm has an advantage over others in terms of quality, location, or other product features. So I did allude to the quality, that the quality is of the same kind. That is the assumption that is made. And even in terms of location, it's assumed that the location is the same and the product features are the same. That is the reason why we assume that there are no costs or there are no differences in terms of the costs of transportation and the like. And the firms under perfect competition are actually profit maximizers. We need to take note of that as well. The major objective of such firms is to maximize the profits. Let's look at how the prices are determined under perfect competition. This is the diagram that is alluding to the industry. As you can see, you've got the supply curve and the demand curve. So where these curves intersect, that is where the price is set. And then each firm is free to sell at the price that has been set by the market forces of supply and demand. The price that has been dictated or determined by the market forces of supply and demand, and each firm is free to sell at that particular price. Let us proceed. Let's look at the short run and long run position. In the short run, you've got fewer firms in the industry. Then more firms may join. Okay, this is due to the presence of supernormal profits, since there are only fewer firms in the industry. And then what we need to understand is that the short run is characterized by returns to the variable factor. Now, what this implies is for you to increase production, you're free to increase the number of units of the variable factor. Say if it's labor, you can increase on labor for you to increase production, since not all the factors of production are variable in the short run. Then they maximize profits where the marginal revenue is equal to the marginal cost. That is, the additional revenue you get from selling a particular product must be equal to the additional cost you incur to produce that particular product. And then we need to understand also that the price they charge is equal to the marginal revenue, which is equal to the average revenue. So this is what gives you the short-run position of a firm under perfect competition. In the long run, you've got more firms in the industry. More firms may leave the industry because since there are so many firms, the profit margins have been reduced, and so firms are not willing to continue operating in that particular industry because the profit margins are low. So a lot of them will leave the industry. Then you need to know that they only make normal profits and not subnormal profits, or rather not supernormal profits, but only normal profits. Then the long run position is also characterized by returns to scale. So to increase output, a firm will increase all the factors of production. They increase labor, capital, and even land, because in the long run, all the factors of production are variable. Okay? We also need to know that firms in the long run, that is under perfect competition, they minimize losses by producing where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. And the price is just the same as for the short run. Marginal revenue is equal to average revenue. And then we also need to understand that these are also equal to average costs. So in the long run, that is how the equilibrium position is like for a firm under perfect competition. We are going to proceed Okay, we have the short run and the long run position of a firm under perfect competition. As you can see in the short run, you have supernormal profits. And then, of course, we know where the marginal cost curve intersects with the marginal revenue curve. That is why you produce. And the reason why you're producing at that particular point is because you want to maximize the profits. As you can see, there are supernormal profits here. Okay? Whereas in the long run, you can see that all the curves are intersecting at one point. And at that particular point, you do not have losses, neither do you have supernormal profits. So all you're making are just normal profits. And you are producing at that point to minimize the losses. And that is the quantity that you are going to produce at that particular point. Now, we know in the long run, of course, you make losses because there are so many firms that have joined the industry and the profit margins have been eroded. So these are the losses that you're making. Okay? Now, we need to understand that the whole lot of that space, that is this space and that space included, is referring to the total costs. As you can see, this is the average cost curve. So these are total costs. And then that bottom space, P or Q, okay, that space is referring to the total revenue. This is the revenue curve. So these are total revenues. So since the total costs are way higher than the total revenue, what you have are losses. Okay? So this essentially is the loss-making position of a firm under perfect competition. So let's just comment on how you minimize losses. So the firm will continue operating in the long run as long as it can cover average variable costs. So as long as the firm is covering the average variable cost, it will continue operating in the long run. Then, of course, the total revenue is represented by areas 1 and 2. I think I did explain. Then total cost is represented by 1, 2, and 3. Okay? Of course, there's been a partition in this case. We are not necessarily alluding to the previous diagram, but we are referring to the diagram that immediately follows. Okay? So if a firm continues to operate it will cover total variable costs, which are given by areas 1, and part of which total fixed costs given by area 2. If it ceased operating, the losses would be 2 and 3. Now with that, let us see what we are referring to. So this is the diagram that we are referring to on minimizing losses. Okay? So of course we have these three areas, 1, 2, and 3, which we are being alluded to. That area, that is area 1, is referring to the average variable costs. Okay? Then the whole lot of that, that is areas 1, 2, and 3, is referring to the total costs. Okay? And since these are variable costs, that is 1, then what is in between, that is 2 and 3, these two are referring to the fixed costs. And we know that a firm is making a loss which is given by 3. As it continues operating. But if it has to cease operating, then of course there will be no variable costs. That much we know. So there will be no variable costs, but it will still continue incurring fixed costs which are given by 2 and 3. So essentially, by not operating, a firm will be making more losses than is the case when it is operating. Because if it's not operating, it is making a loss of 2 and 3, whereas when it's operating, it's only making a loss of 3. Okay? So it's advisable that you continue operating in the long run, even if you're making losses. That's the implication of this.